Hi, welcome to the next of our webinars, and today we'll be doing an overview of project management, and I'm joined by Steve Page, who will be taking you through today's session. So just as normal, just mention that this is funded by the Humber Business Growth Hub as part of the Grow My SME program. This is a free program of business support, and there are lots of other support and workshops available. So please do go and have a look at the events page on the Grow My SME page. The other thing to mention here is questions. We want as many questions as we can. That's what we're here for. We're here to answer those questions, try and make it as interactive as we possibly can. So you should see a little questions function on your dashboard today. Please do put the questions in as and when they become into your head, because then we can make sure we go through those throughout the session today. We have built time in today's session to go through any questions, although there is a lot of information in today's session, as I'm sure Steve will agree with there. If you want the handouts and the slides from today, they are available in the handout section as well, so please do make sure you download those before the end of today's session. So without further ado, I'll pass you on to Steve, who will be taking you through today's session. Steve.
Fine, thank you very much, Peter, and welcome to today's webinar on project management. It's the fourth part in the series, and we are going to be doing a recap of some of those key issues that we had before. So for those of you that have attended some of the earlier project management sessions, then we'll be going over some of that ground again. For those of you that haven't, what we've tried to do today is bring as much of that sort of information and slide pack together so that we can go through a recap. And for those that have missed some of the earlier ones, then there aren't any gaps in that. You'll be able to get that sort of full picture. So, without further ado, as Peter says, let's dive in. We've got quite a lot of information that we're wanting to share with you today, and we've designed the slide packs as we normally do, with as much of that information laid into the slides as we can. So rather than just having a picture and me talk over it, we're trying to create some interesting looking slides with lots of information that will give you a good reference point to reflect back on after the webinar. So please download a copy of the slide pack if you're interested in receiving one. Right, so if I can just get my slides to work. Yes, so my name's Steve Page. I'm a professionally qualified chief engineer, and I have a master's degree in business. The first part of my career was in the aerospace industry, where I've spent over 23 years. Working my way up the engineering line to become a chief engineer of the training systems and simulation division, which was part of the military aircraft company, and designed, developed and produced all of the training equipment and full-blown flight simulators to support that full range of military aircraft. And then I progressed my career into project management, where I was responsible for managing the vast majority of the research, development, innovation and technology development programs. Somewhere in the order around about £100 million a year we were investing in those sorts of developments. So it's really some of that experience that I'm wanting to share with you today, and quite a lot of the sort of slides are based around some of those experiences. The second part of my career has been, for the last sort of 17 years, running my own business coaching and consultancy company, Page Consulting Limited, where really I've been working with businesses across the Yorkshire, Humber and Lincolnshire regions to help them gain some of that knowledge and understanding in terms of supporting them to grow their businesses. So that's a little bit about my background. This isn't about me, but I just wanted to share that sort of experience that I've had, so you can see where I'm coming from in terms of some of the things that I'll be covering with you today. Right, so in terms of what we've got lined up for you there's the list of the things that we're going to be covering. As far as sort of agile project management is concerned, really agile is quickly gaining popularity in the modern workplace as a way to complete work in our complex, ever-changing world. Agile thrives in adaptive cultures where team members are quick to change if the outcome is a more productive work experience. In this webinar, you're going to learn about Agile project management, its key components and principles, as well as how you might get into the swing of implementing some of the, or a selected, Agile methodology. So we're going to start off today by just stepping back and just taking a moment to reflect on the traditional approach to project management, and in that way we can compare and contrast that with Agile and how Agile is set up and works. We will take a moment out really to sort of look at the roots of Agile and focus on the Kanban method, which is one of the major primary methodologies that is under the umbrella of Agile. And we will then sort of pick up on the modern day, where Agile project management has got to in terms of its evolution and development, and touch on this thing called the Agile Manifesto, which is really the guiding principles and sort of underpinning values which define the approach, and of which there are a variety of different variations on the theme, individual methodologies that have been adapted to meet specific project challenges. We'll touch on some of those Agile methodologies and just look briefly in terms of what you might need to do if you're wanting to embrace this particular style and approach to project management for those situations where it is going to be most beneficial for you to do so. And we'll pick up any questions and answers at the end, so please feel free to use the question function to send in any comments and any questions, and Peter and myself will pick those up at the end. So, welcome to the webinar. Let's dive in and have a little look at the traditional approach, get my teeth in, the traditional approach to project management. What's all that? What's involved with that, and how is it different from Agile? So, traditional approach to project management. For those of you that are project managers already or have recently come into the world of project management, then you may very well recognize some of these key characteristics. For those of you who are thinking about taking up a career or are facing the responsibility of having to manage a project that is going to be coming your way, then again, today's webinar should be quite relevant to you. So some of the key characteristics that we associate with traditional project management. That is that we do the planning up front. Fundamentally, we try to work out how we will organize all of the different activities and tasks. We need to identify those first, then we need to organize them, and then we need to lay them into some sort of time frame, understanding the interrelationships that might exist between certain tasks and activities, insofar as you can't start one until the one that needed to have been done before that has been completely finished. Not the case for every situation, but certainly you do need to understand where it is the case and plan that into your project plans accordingly. So we do all of the planning up front using the knowledge and the assumptions that we have before we've actually started to do the project. And this does create some significant risks and difficulties, because you don't know what you don't know, and you don't know what's going to go right. You don't know what's going to go wrong, and when and how difficult it's going to be in order to remedy it. So you may leave some contingencies in your plan that gives you some buffer in order to be able to deal with the unexpected. But that isn't a total safeguard, and the customer's looking for you to try to get whatever it is that your project is aimed at achieving sooner rather than later, and at the lowest cost rather than at an additional cost. So if you're packing in extra amounts of contingency in terms of budget and in terms of time, you're going to be going in the opposite direction to the direction that the customer is wanting you to go into. So we have this upfront planning, this sequencing, which has got a clear start point that then follows a plan of a series of activities and tasks that we then execute. We monitor as project managers, often from a bit of a distance, complete and close. So a project is a self-contained thing. It's got a start and a finish, and there's a series of things that we need to do in a sequenced and controlled order that we try to second guess right up front in terms of the plans that we create. And there's a tendency not for us to want to keep changing the plans because it just creates a lot of extra work, a whole host of uncertainties if the plans are constantly chopping and changing when people are trying to look for some certainty. So there's an emphasis on these linear processes, lots of documentation, the upfront planning as I just described, and key tasks being prioritized. So those project managers amongst you will know when we talk about critical paths. This is the sequence of activity through the program plan or the project plan that can determine the overall completion time. So there will be a set of activities, a sequence of activities that follow on from each other that ultimately determine the end point for the project. And if you get complications and slippages and delays in that sequence, that critical path, then that will automatically extend out to extend the whole project completion point. So we've got these interrelationships and these sensitivities that we need to be aware of. And the documentation is a means by which we can get it down on paper and communicate that information so that others are aware of it as well. Time and budget you'd think would be fixed, but in reality, they are a variable. And the requirements are fixed in terms of the deliverables from the project. So the project is all about delivering a fixed set of products or services or entities to a customer, and we will try to do that in a particular time frame and within a certain amount of money that we have agreed to do so. But there is risk associated with that because all our planning is up front and it's not based upon any knowledge or understanding of how things are evolving and the only way we can deal with that is to completely replan and reschedule and reorganize the project at interim points, which can be a massive amount of work, create all sorts of difficulties and issues. Traditional project management lends itself best to situations where the project is very similar to ones that you've already done before, that you know what that sequence is, you know how the plans rolled out, you know where the risks were, and therefore you've got some degree of certainty in putting a plan together because it's based upon a plan that has already been executed and that you know and understand. Where you have situations like research and development, technology development, innovation, product development processes, new product introduction, there is some significant degrees of uncertainty, then the planning, the ability to put plans together in a really clear way that isn't likely to find that they have to keep getting redone is incredibly difficult, if not utterly impossible. So, for every step in the traditional project management methodology, there are tools and techniques that have been defined. There are training courses. There is a whole host of information in terms of the best practice that has evolved in terms of dealing with each of those particular project management tasks that give you a fighting chance to be able to bring a project somewhere in on time, on quality, meeting the customer's satisfaction, and on cost too. The bigger it is, the more complex it is, the more variables there are, the less certain in terms of having done something similar to this before, the less likely you're going to be able to do that. And they follow this sort of cascading arrangement whereby when one thing gets finished, it enables us to start another. So you see these Gantt charts, something along the lines of this, where you lay down all your activities in a schedule, as shown on the left-hand side, and then you can visualize those in terms of these time frames, these time windows, and the interdependencies that might exist between them. And that just sort of typically shows the cascade or the waterfall effect. You can see that with the sort of key black lines that are shown here, where we cascade off the first one down onto the second one, and down onto the third one, and down onto the fourth one. The little blue upside down triangles sort of represent maybe key review points. So again, we can cover these project management charts in all sorts of useful information that will give us an indication as to what we would like to see happen. And then we can track and monitor all of the slippage and problems and rescheduling and all of the rest of it that goes along as the real world unfolds, and we find it wasn't following the plan that we had decided to put down. So sort of trying to keep that plan reflecting reality is a continuously challenging and difficult thing to do. Like I say, great technique where there's some certainty and predictability about how things are going to work because you can put a good plan together. Where you've got a project which is massively uncertain, you haven't done it that particular way before, then you will see that the risks ramp up in terms of you trying to keep your plan aligned to all of the things that are actually happening in reality. So the traditional approach to project management, while it can be incredibly powerful, it can help us to deliver projects that without using those techniques, we would not get anywhere near. It lends itself to more predictable types of situations better and not so much to where the predictability is lower or the uncertainty is higher. So some of the key benefits. You've got these clearly defined objectives, so we know what we're setting out to achieve and they can be communicated. We've got controllable processes in that we're using these tools and techniques that will help us each step of the way. There's a lot of documentation which is capturing what's going on and being used to communicate information around those that are involved in the project. As well as stakeholders, those who have an interest in the project but aren't necessarily directly involved in it. There's more accountability and really there is a system that is well understood and practiced by thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people around the world. And there's a massive suite of software that you can get, which has a lot of those automated planning tools available to you, and that can create the visualization charts from a table, can create your network flow diagrams and a whole host of documentation so that you don't have to. So by putting in the bare minimum information, a lot of that documentation can be auto-generated and communicated for you. Now, we mentioned that project management, or the traditional approach to project management, doesn't work as well where we have more uncertain situations. Innovation projects being of particular note. And I know from bitter experience trying to apply traditional project management principles and methods to trying to manage some of the innovation and R&D projects that I had to manage some time back in my career, just how difficult and challenging it can be. And if some of these methodologies that we have available to us today were around, we would have been using them without a jot. We would have been racing to them. Having said that, we did actually do quite a bit of development of the project management methodologies to make them much more flexible and agile. So we're moving in the right direction. So let's just have a little look at some of the differences in terms of the project so that you might recognize some of the signs and be able to pick and choose which methodology would be most appropriate to you. Where you have innovation, new product development, and other projects which are quite uncertain in terms of what you're trying to do in order to get the outcome, you'll find that they're sort of quite unique. They're unclear as to what you need to do to achieve the outcomes that you're looking for. They're often subject to quite rapid technological changes. Again, they can have fairly scarce resource constraints, and scarce resources can be a real problem with the traditional management approach, because if you can get them booked in for a particular time to work on a task that your project needs, and then the whole time frame slips, you can't use that time, trying to rebook them again can be an absolute nightmare, and that again can further push a project timescale. There's a greater need for creativity, so again it's part of this scarce resource, but it's difficult to estimate how much time it takes for somebody to come up with a really brilliant idea. They're knowledge intensive, so you're needing to use specialist people. Again, it's sort of tied in with this scarce resource constraint. Often subject to rapid change in the marketplace too. You've identified a problem, you need to get a new product out there quite quickly. First to the market often reaps the benefit, and therefore somebody getting in before you means that the whole market dynamics changes, and what you're trying to do then might not be that appropriate. And we often have what we call a soft scope with uncertain timescales around them. You know, where you're looking at technology development, you might find that when you get into it, there's a whole load of other stuff that you need to be doing that you weren't aware of at the start. And therefore, if your boundaries are too fixed and you can't look at that, the project's not going anywhere. So you have to have these flexible boundaries that enable you to incorporate stuff that you weren't aware of when you first put your plan together before the project started. Now, when we have a little look at where those sorts of circumstances arise, then we often find that in the IT, software development, and some of those sorts of industries, we see all sorts of issues where the traditional approach to project management really struggles to be able to deliver the results that we're looking for. So just quickly, a few very sort of simple quotes that I've been able to extract around the outcomes of projects from a variety of audits that have gone on. So the first one was a survey of 300 large companies. 65% of those reported innovation projects were grossly over budget, behind schedule, and the technology that they were trying to develop wasn't performing. And that was a KPMG audit. Another one, research conducted by Computer World, the Computer World magazine, reported that 1 out of every 2 projects overruns its budget by at least 180%, and failed systems projects cost over $100 billion a year. Now that is a scale of failure which really does make you need to sort of sit up in your seat and ask yourself the question, have I got the right methodology here for what I'm trying to do in managing these projects? And just a third and final one, 31% of a poll of 8,380 projects were cancelled, whilst only 16% were on schedule and on budget. And that was an audit done by the Standish Group. So it just shows you the extent to which using the wrong project methodology can have a significant bearing on the outcome of your project. And even if you do manage to complete it and you don't run out of money, run out of time, or somebody pulls the plug on you, you can still find that it bears little resemblance to the original plan and forecast that you put together for it in the first place. It doesn't help your career, and it doesn't help build confidence in those who are investing in those projects that they're asking you to run. So, what's the alternative? Agile project management is offered as an alternative, particularly for those project situations and environments where you have this lower level of certainty, this unpredictability, and you tend to find those in the product development, research and development, innovation, technology developments types of situations, of which there are whole industries that gear themselves up around that sort of thing. So, can be incredibly powerful there, but can also be incredibly powerful in manufacturing, production, and engineering environments where you may have some quite dynamic situations occurring that you need to keep on top of, and having a robust fixed plan where you have no foresight of what these problems might be as they crop up when you put the plan together some weeks or months beforehand, won't help you particularly. So Agile project management, we're finding now, is being picked up and is being endorsed and used more and more and more as organizations and individuals start to understand it, see how they can apply it, put it into play, and see the benefits that are coming from it. So what is Agile project management? Well, Agile project management, or APM as it's often referred, is an iterative approach to managing projects. So what do I mean by iterative approach? Well, it's something iterative. It keeps going round in a cycle. So a typical Agile project management cycle might be put an outline or initial plan together, just sort of the framework of it, that then might have design activities, development, testing, deployment, and then a review. And from the review, we then learn lessons, and we repeat that again, but with the lessons learned. So we've got these iterations, or these cycles that are going around, where we're learning the lessons from what it is that we have done in the previous cycle, so that we can get better and better and better and better. And not only that, but a problem that might have occurred in the first cycle that we then learn how to deal with may be fine, but a different problem that didn't occur in the first cycle then pops up in the second one. So again, we're able to adapt to it in a rapid way. And we can really focus on key aspects of those activities that are involved in the cycle, and put some real effort on pushing them through quickly, sprinting them through the process. And the different methodologies will look at where that sort of energy and focus is placed in terms of these sprint activities. So a problem goes wrong, there's a problem occurs, we need to put some resource on it quickly, and we need to clear that block and sprint it through to catch up. We can't allow backlogs to build up. We need to be on them, and that requires us to be quite flexible in terms of how we manage that particular cycle. So we've got this iterative approach to managing projects, which is utterly different to the trying to put your plan together all up front without any prior knowledge of what's happening, and then rigidly trying to hold that plan together without changing it. You're almost diametrically opposite into the way that you're thinking and managing the agile situation. It's almost built around coping with whatever might come out the woodwork, and have the means by which to spot it quickly, pounce all over it, get it sorted, learn the lessons, and make sure that we deal with it really effectively if it occurs again, but actually trying to design out so it doesn't. Okay, so we've got this iterative approach to managing projects that focuses on breaking down the task into, or breaking down the overall project down into small manageable tasks that we can be all over. And these can be completed in short iterations throughout the project lifecycle. So as I mentioned, we can cycle around, we can iterate around the full life cycle, but we can also iterate around one particular sub-element within that cycle to really make sure that the workload is flowing through it at the rate that we're wanting it to, so that we've got this continuous flow of work taking place in a smooth way, and we're all over any issues that might crop up as and when they occur. And we're set up and geared up for that. So the teams that are involved will adopt the Agile methodology. Or those teams that do adopt the Agile methodology are able to complete work faster, adapt to a changing project environment, and to optimize their workflow in a way that just really isn't possible in the more traditional approach. So when is it used? So the sort of current APM, Agile Project Management, really sort of started to evolve in the early 2000s, about 2002, 2003, where coming out from the lean manufacturing sort of philosophies, people were able to see that there was a way that things were being managed that might assist them in terms of developing software in a much more flexible and fluid and effective way. So the latest sort of project management methodologies that we are seeing and using and learning about at the moment really are quite new, insofar as they're, you know, only sort of 15, 18 years old. The agile approach to project management is sort of quickly being adapted now by much more than just the IT teams, but we're seeing marketeers, universities, certainly the military, automotive industry, and a whole range of other industries and environments where we have this need for flexibility in terms of the way that projects are being run. And they are optimizing and adapting the methodologies to suit those environments. So we're starting to build up now clusters of particular types of agile methods that sit under the banner of agile project management. So many organizations can benefit from agile project management. It's simple to set up and it's easy to utilize. Although when you're first sort of getting your heads around it, because it is so different to what you might be used to from the traditional approach, it's not always easy to see that. So you just do need to sort of step back, open your mind, and look at it as a tool for helping you to manage these more uncertain developmental type of project situations. And I think you'll be able to see just how powerful and what it's able to be used for. To really understand, in my view, the essence of it all, it's good to just go back and look at the origins to see where it came from, how it's evolved, and why it is what it is today. So I'm going to just take a moment out to just walk us a little bit back through those origins just quickly, just to give you a flavour for how it has come about, and that I think will also be quite informative and help you to sort of understand what it is, how it works, and where it's come from. Right, so to do that, I'm just going to spend a moment really looking at the origins of Kanban, what Kanban is, and why it's the starting point of the agile project management methodologies that we see being used today. So Kanban, a Japanese word that really comes from two words, kan meaning sign and ban meaning a board. So in Japanese, a Kanban is a signboard. Now, the sort of roots really stem back from the 1600s, where Japan entered a period of stability and economic growth, following many years of war and social upheaval. Town streets became crowded with shops and businesses fighting for customer awareness and attraction, not too dissimilar from what we have today. Shop owners made these custom shop signs, or kanbans, to draw their customers in, as you can sort of see in the picture that we have today, that we have on the screen. So the shop signs informed people of the kinds of products and services that each shop offered. Kanban sign designers started to compete artistically, crafting their signboards to make them stand out from others in the streets. The practice continues today, although we now apply more modern technology to that signage. So you can see how over a period of time, the Kanbans have evolved from those wooden painted signboards to the neon displays that we see now in terms of catching your eye and attention. So what has that got to do with modern agile project management, I hear you ask? A good question. What it has to do with it is that it triggered an idea for a young engineer who was working for Toyota in the sort of mid to late 40s after the Second World War. Toyota, as a lot of the Japanese automobile industries, were on their knees. Japan had lost the war, it had surrendered, and was looking to reinvest massively and build back its economy, its engineering base. And Toyota, who was the owner and MD of Toyota in that sort of post-war era, sort of looked at his business on the brink of bankruptcy and really wanted to try to see what he could do to rebuild his business. After some market research and looking at how other automotive companies, particularly General Motors and the likes, were operating, who were the world leaders at that time, he decided that they really needed to focus on producing only products that were needed, couldn't afford to invest massively in all of the stock and other items that would then be sitting around waiting for somebody to buy them. So they really needed to get manufacture against orders. So they didn't want to keep the customers waiting for particularly long periods of time, so they needed to make sure that they got what was needed, when it was needed, and only in the amounts that were needed. And really put some focus on trying to develop a business that was incredibly lean, efficient, and effective, and use the little bit of money that it had got incredibly well. And there was a young engineer in the company called Taiichi Ono, there's a picture of him there, who really embraced this particular set of goals and set about the mission of trying to work out how the company could achieve and deliver these. And he identified these 7 kinds of waste that he had identified that were getting in the way and stopping the company from achieving those particular goals. Those of you that have been involved in lean manufacturing will know the 7 deadly wastes, the muda, as the Japanese word for waste is, as captured there. So, you know, looking for things like the transportation waste, moving stuff around when it didn't need to be moved, often because there's too much stock around. The item you want is right at the back of the shed, so you've got to move everything out of the way in order to get to it. You've then got to move everything back into place again because it was cluttering up something else. All takes time, money, and effort, and slows things down. Having too much inventory or stock floating around adds to those transportation wastes, ties money up. Doing a whole load of activities that don't really add value, and sort of streamlining and stripping the processes out in order to be able to just focus on the things that really needed to be done and done well, and speed the whole process up. Looking at where people were held waiting because something hadn't arrived on time. Overproduction, where they were producing too much volume in a batch, and again was contributing to waiting and holding things up, etc. So all of these principles of waste, the foundations for lean, all were being pursued by Taiichi Ohno and the Toyota company, with a view to designing them out, eliminating them, putting a whole series of projects in place in order to get rid of them. And they are also wastes that you can easily find designing and building in to or occurring in projects that you might run. And when you have a software development project where you need to get that product to market as quickly as you possibly can, and it needs to work very well, you need to make sure that you are dealing with these particular 7 deadly wastes as part of the way that you plan out and organize and deal with that project. So part of the problem that he has was that he wanted to pull a particular vehicle production through the plant. So when a customer placed an order, what he needed to do was communicate that order down through procurement, down through production, and out into the material supply chains in a very effective and rapid way. And the idea of using a Kanban, a signboard, or in his case, an index card, to communicate that information, because it was way before we got all the computer systems that we've got now. So he came up with this Kanban system, this card indexing system that enabled him to communicate that through. So massively a powerful system that they put in place, and I think even they were surprised about how well it worked. It reduced all the stockpiles, it improved the product throughput rates, it provided high visibility of the whole process. And by 1963, Toyota had adopted the Kanban card index signaling system across all of its processes, across its entire plants, across all of the company around the world. And Toyota went on from operating at a loss to become the global giant competitor that it is today. And the Kanban card indexing system was one of those foundation stones that enabled it to separate itself out from all of the other automotive companies around the world. Taiichi Ohno went on to become executive chief president in 1975 and really pioneered what became known as the Toyota production system, but as more commonly been described as lean manufacturing. Because all of those principles that he developed and Toyota developed are really the guiding principles for lean manufacturing. So in terms of agile systems, then having something with that capability to deal with whatever the issues might be sort of enables you to see that the traditional approach to project management was being replaced by these alternative communication systems. So let's just have a quick look to see how they worked. So they were basically operated using a signboard, a Kanban board that enabled you to put an awful lot of information together so you could see what was going on. And therefore you could manage that much more effectively. So fundamentally they were interested in 3 things: what you needed to do, your backlog, what you were currently doing, and what you'd already done, because that can move on to the next stage. So the work to be done, the work in progress, and the work completed are the fundamental parameters that you need in order to be able to manage the work throughput, so that when a customer order comes along, the communications go out and all of the various bits of materials and activities all come together in a coordinated way, so that that car can be delivered to the customer in the shortest period of time, really using all of those lean manufacturing principles. So Kanban board should really be highly visible so that everybody can see it. The more visibility it's got, the better it will work, because everybody in the team can see what's going on. So what you do then is, with this methodology, is you'd map out your processes into either process maps or value streams. A value stream is a process map, but it's one that enables us to identify the value content. And there are really three types of content. There's a real value added, that's what the customer's prepared to pay for. There's business value added, that's what the customer doesn't want to necessarily pay for, but the business sees value in it. It's the recording, the administration, the management, those sorts of things, without which you wouldn't be able to operate. Everything else is not value added. So you can go through and streamline a process by asking yourself the question, is the company prepared to pay for it? Is this something the business has to do? Because if it isn't one of those two things, we don't want to be doing it. So you can streamline up your processes, make them really, really efficient. And these are sort of some of the complexities that you can find in doing some of the processes, process mapping, process reviews. I must say now, I've most probably done 2,000-3,000 process mapping and re-engineering projects, and each one never ceases to amaze me in terms of the waste and non-value added activities that get designed into these things as they evolve over a period of time. So just introducing a Kanban methodology gives you the opportunity to step back and fundamentally clean up the processes and the way in which your organization has grown and evolved. So what you can then do is you can create a grid, and you can start to put the various key stages of your processing. So if we're looking at a particular manufacturing one, we may very well have a customer specify something that then translates into the design of the product. It may be a standard product, but we're adding certain customization features to it. We're then going to be making the parts, assembling them, testing it all out, packing and dispatching it. So what we now need to be doing is we need to be pulling the various activities through that process in a really fast and efficient way. And we can do that using these little index cards. So at any moment in time, we may have a variety of different jobs that are either waiting to be done, being worked on, or have been done or waiting to move on to the next stage. And we want to know the status of all of those and where they are, because anything that gets blocked or held up or whatever, we want to be all over it so that we can clear that and get that moving, because if that gets delayed, the knock-on implications associated with other things downstream could be severe. So we cannot afford to allow any of that knock-on consequence to occur. And we can stream up the activities. So we might have that first row is dealing with, I don't know, things maybe to do with the chassis. Another stream which might be to do with the body. Another stream might be to do with the engine. Another stream might be to do with all of the steering and the wheels and the subsystems. So we may have a number of things that we are trying to manage in parallel that will all come together at a particular final point. and a delay in any one of those can then create chaos on the shop floor. So I'll just put my power on. So we can load up our Kanban board with our Kanban cards in order to be able to really sort of see how the system, what's going on in the system, so that we can be able to manage it, sprint particular bits through where there may be a delay, so that we are keeping everything in balance and in harmony. So the board can have a whole series of different types of information represented by different cards, and we can organize and customize it. I mean, if you are wanting to introduce a Kanban system now, there's a tremendous amount of software that is available to you, and the opportunity and ability for you to configure and customize your Kanban card around your particular needs and the sort of systems and colors and information that you might need to provide to deal with a whole host of situations. So when you get a blocker, something that's blocking, that's got blocked and can't move forward, you know, we need to know about that. We need to know where the priorities are going to be each day. We need to get a feel for the metrics and how well we're achieving them. We can use a variety of different colors. There can be some particular criteria that we have to meet in order to be able to pass a particular point. So all of this we can design and develop into our particular customized Kanban system. The sort of index cards, we can have all sorts of information packed onto them, the task that the card is representing, the type or nature of that activity, some particular unique ID for that particular task, the priority level that it has, where in the sequence of events it's currently got to, sort of estimated time that might be needed, part of the metrics, an individual who might be responsible for ensuring that that work is done. So we can really pack an awful lot of information into a grid, into a framework, into a Kanban board system that enables us to understand what's going on at any moment in time, and for the team to be able to keep it updated and understand where we are with everything, with a view that any hiccups, we're on them straight away. So the Kanban board is a tool that's highly effective at easily communicating a large amount of information using cards, columns, colors, icons, and other visual indicators that will help people to understand and retain information. Most teams that use Kanban tools develop their own unique configurations, as we've just been saying, making it easier to manage processes and workflows that are important to helping their business run smoothly. The key to creating an effective Kanban system lies within its ease of use. So teams that are most productive with Kanban tools are those that customize their boards to do not only to do what they need to do to manage things, but also to improve productivity and efficiency, and also identify and spot where there might be opportunities for improvement. So if we keep finding that in one particular part of the process we're getting things blocked, then we need to be not just dealing with that, but trying to understand what it is that's causing those blockages to keep happening, and get in there and do something about them to stop that happening. So this is a concept known as continuous improvement, and is an integral aspect of the Kanban philosophy, because it's an integral aspect of lean manufacturing and the Toyota production system. So order and sequences of cards. The steps on the board are of course unique to your given process. But there are some sort of characteristics that can be particularly useful. So, make sure the steps are sequential. Try only to record the steps that have a significant amount of time to them. Don't overly clutter the board up with so much detail that it just looks confusing and you can't see what's going on. Cards should be prioritized from top to bottom in a row. So that gives you the ability to sprint a particular job through and keep coming around and doing the next sprint, coming around and doing the next sprint. And it's useful to break down the backlog of work into different types, sort of features and bugs for a team of developers, or presentations, newsletters, web management for a team of marketeers, and we saw that color card on the card to sort of denote the different types of card. And again, we can, as things might build up in terms of the backlog, the list of things to be done, we can sort of see what types of activities are building up at any particular point in time. Stating that the WIP limit for each stage of work helps the team to decide how many items to take on. You might need to experiment with that. The WIP is work in progress. It's the amount of stock or the amount of items, the inventory that we're pushing through a production process or a software development or some development program. We don't want to have too little that we can't get the outcome, and we certainly don't want too much that it clogs everything up. So it gives you the ability to sort of see what that right amount of flow should be. You might need to run it for a few weeks, experiment a little bit to get things settled down. Make sure team members are pulling new items for themselves after they've completed work on a previous task. So it's a continuous activity. You know, stuff's waiting, you do it, you pass it on, and you're next back on to pull stuff out the backlog to get on with it. Just because you've done it doesn't mean to say that you're hanging around waiting to be told. You get on and you get the next one done. The middle steps, sort of specifying, implementing and validating work, are often divided into sub-columns. The right column of each step holds cards that have been completed and are therefore waiting to go on to the next person. And that should therefore be visible to the team so that they don't need to be told to do it. The fact that it's got into that waiting position is the instruction for them to pick it up and get on with it. So a Kanban board should be highly visible. The more visible it is, the better. And really, we're looking at it communicating a number of key things. Getting that WIP or work in progress level right. And it's not just the inventory, although it can primarily be in a production environment. It can be all of the activity tasks that might need to be done. So it's that whole workload level. Are we overloading people or underloading them? Where should we be? What does that ideal look like? We should be able to see from the board how people are doing. Are we seeing big backlogs occurring? Are we seeing the board clearing through in incredibly short periods of time? In which case we're not putting enough work into it. What focal points should be addressed during the daily stand-ups? So again, this is real-time management of real-time situations. So we'd have a start-up meeting at the beginning. They're called stand-up meetings because we don't want people sat down. We want them coming in, short and sharp, and back on with the jobs that they're doing. You may have another one at lunch. You may have one before you close, or a shift handover meeting. Short, sharp, key communication where we can deal with whatever situations might manifest themselves at that time. So the live view of the process also lets management understand what the team's doing. It provides a sense of comfort that work is under control, and an insight into whether the risks are being taken into consideration or not. If there are any problems, the board reflects this, and everybody viewing it can see it, so that there's maximum transparency. There's nowhere to hide. There are little delays associated with problems being tackled. So the purpose of the Kanban really is to make team members be able to self-organize without having to have continuous supervision. It's their system, it's their board, they're using it to deliver the outcomes that they are seeking to achieve and deliver. While achieving that may take some time, the intermediate goal in the day-to-day running of the team for them is to pull the right work through at the right time in the right sequence. And that way we're not getting all these sorts of problems where one thing hasn't been done and everything is held waiting for that to be sprinted through to catch up. The board belongs to the team. It's foremost not a project management tool, but a tool for the team and their stakeholders, albeit it provides a very effective project management environment. So some of the key benefits, I'm hoping you'll have seen these by now anyway. Builds cooperation through daily meetings where you're walking the board. Instant visibility of activity, status, progress. You can balance demand against the throughput. It avoids this stopping, starting, where you are on with something and have to stop it and then start something else to finish it off because there's sort of chaos ensuing. Again, it's very lean. There's sort of less work in progress, and therefore there's less risk, less clutter, less congestion, and greater flexibility. It drives close collaboration. It's a team thing. Everybody wants to succeed. That brings agility and flexibility to the way the team operates. And it allows the team to become self-organizing. There is no excuse for something not being done. If the board is identifying that there is a problem, the team have the responsibility, accountability, and authority in order to be able to get in there and get those issues dealt with. There is this sort of swarming to blockers to facilitate resolutions. They enable bottlenecks and other areas of waste to start to become quite visible. And they give you the ability to sort of overlay metrics so that you can assist future estimation in terms of understanding what typically amounts of time might be needed in order to be able to undertake certain cycles or product life cycle. So although the Kanban method was originated as a measure of stock management by Toyota, the goal of Kanban really can now be applied to a great many different situations. It can be applied to knowledge work, for example, where really what it's trying to do is exactly the same. You can start to use it in other situations outside of manufacturing to visualize the work and the workflow, to limit or control the amount of work so that you get that in balance with the throughput and requirements you need. You can optimize the flow, and you can find improvement opportunities and remove the waste and move it. So I've thrown an awful lot at you in a relatively short period of time, at times racing by. I hope that that has given you a good indication as to some of the shortfalls that we see in the traditional project management approach, although it can be incredibly powerful for the more repetitive, more certain types of situations. It cannot be the best tool to use where there is a great deal of uncertainty, as you will find in research and development, software development, innovation, technology development, and other more adventurous types of project situations. We've taken a moment out to have a little look at some of the origins. We've seen that it's got roots in lean manufacturing. We've seen how the principal methodology has evolved from the Toyota production systems Kanban communication system within that suite of other lean manufacturing principles and technologies that have evolved, and we can see how they have used it incredibly well to manage each particular new car sale as a project in its own right, pulling all the materials from the supply chain through its production, testing, assembly, testing, packaging and dispatch processes to get that out to the customer in the really most efficient and effective and accurate way. So the whole thing is geared around trying to help the customer achieve those particular aspirations that they were looking for when that order was placed with the company. What we're going to be looking at is Agile methodology, the Agile manifesto, and some of the latest tools and techniques that we'll see in the Agile toolkit. So I suggest we just clear our heads for 5 minutes, literally 5 minutes, stretch your legs, recharge your cups of tea, and I will be back with you very, very shortly to continue the second half of this webinar. I look forward to seeing you then. Good morning and welcome back to the Project Management Agile Overview. We've spent a little bit of time this morning comparing and contrasting the traditional approach to project management with Agile, and have gone back to try and really understand the roots and origins of it so that you can sort of get a feel for how it works and the significant differences in approach that exist between the traditional approach, where you're planning everything up front without prior knowledge, to the agile flexible approach, where you are creating visual boards and display systems and presenting information about what's actually happening at the moment, so that you can see minute by minute, step by step, what's going on and be able to interact or react to that in the fastest possible way. Right, so let's just have a little look at this thing that's often called the Agile Manifesto. It's really the sort of guiding principles and values that that define the sort of umbrella of Agile project management, and guides the different specific methodologies that are evolving and growing and refining that sit underneath that umbrella. So what is the Agile Manifesto? Well, fundamentally, it's based upon 4 core values and 12 guiding principles. And we're just going to spend a little bit of time whizzing through these. That I've tried to bullet point as much of the information as I can in the slide packs for you for reference, but sort of given the time that we've got, it's we don't have sufficient time to sort of go through the nitty-gritty detail of it all, just sort of to set the scene for you. So the 4 guiding principles. The first guiding principle really is this one, that individuals and interactions have priority over processes and tools. So as sophisticated as technology gets, the human element will always serve as an important role in any kind of project management. Relying too heavily on processes and tools results in an inability to adapt to changing circumstances. And it's that ability to adapt to changing circumstances that us humans are so good at, that really we're wanting to bring out to the fore. So individuals and interactions have priority over processes and tools. The second core value is working products have priority over comprehensive documentation. And you'll know, if you've been a project manager for any time, just how much documentation there is. Plans for this, plans for that, the extent of the communication, reports, minutes, meetings, you know, you name it. You carry a large administrative, bureaucratic process along with the traditional approach. And the bigger the organization that you work for, often the greater is the documentation need that is that comes with it. So as important as documentation is, working software, if we take software as an example of our product, is more important. The value is all about giving the developers exactly what they need to get the job done without overloading them, particularly with reams of paperwork. The third core value, customer collaboration is more important than contract negotiation. So your customers are one of the most powerful assets. Whether internal or external customers, involving them throughout the process can help to ensure that the end product meets their needs more effectively. And the final core value, responding to change is more important than following a plan. So this value is one of the biggest departures from traditional project management. Historically, change was seen as an expense, a delay, and one to be avoided. Agile allows for continuous change throughout the life of any project through the iterative nature of how it works. Each sprint provides an opportunity for review and course correction. So I hope that sort of sets the tone, the essence of the approach, where we're bringing human interactivity, reactive responsiveness to situations, and a focus on the customer right to the forefront of what we do. Let's just quickly have a little look at these 12 guiding principles, which sort of define the environment that we're trying to create that will enable agile project management to flourish and prosper. So what's the first of the 12 guiding principles of agile project management? It's this: our highest priority is to satisfy the customer through early and continuous supply of valuable deliverables. So by shortening the time between documenting the project, reporting to your customer, and then getting feedback, you can focus on the real goal of the project, which is delivering what the customer wants, not what you've planned. An example of this is one recently where I've just got a contract for a particular project, which is looking at delivering a whole series of webinars. And we have put a schedule together. So we have the first round of webinars that we're need to deliver. So our focus is all on getting those developed, tested, dry run, and delivered. And then there's a second round and a third round. So we can structure and phase the delivery to the customer in a balanced way, where we're not all being overloaded, but we can roll the development through. Not only that, but the lessons that we learn from the first round, we can incorporate and pick up in the second round, and then the third round, and the fourth round, and so on. So the second guiding principle: welcome changing requirements, even late in development. If you are a hardened traditional project manager, as I used to be, then that goes against everything that you have come to learn and understand about the traditional approach. Changing requirements in your project and all of the consequential replanning, reorganizing, rescheduling, and everything that goes with that wasn't something that you would have been particularly keen to embrace. But if you're looking at flexibility, responsiveness, getting the customer's needs met as soon as you possibly can, that is the only way that you're going to do it. So welcome changing requirements, even late in development. Agile processes harness change for the customer's competitive advantage. Okay, so number 3, Deliver projects frequently, from a couple of weeks to a couple of months. This is that phased approach that I was just talking to you about. Give preference to the shorter timescales. So understand what the customer needs first, and then gear yourself up in order to be able to pull that through. Looking at where the priorities need to be and which bits of it you need to put some real focus on to sprint them through the overall project cycle. So the next one, number 4, coordinating team members must work together daily throughout the project. So it's like they're talking two different languages, and in a sense they are, but both the business and the developer side of the project are crucial to its success. So you need to find ways that different disciplines, different groups, different individuals can find a common environment where they talk and understand the same language and each value each other's contribution to the project that is being run. And not have a series of sort of silos where somebody will do a job and then chuck it over the wall to the next person in the sequence, and never the two should communicate. We're really looking at breaking all of those boundaries down and trying to get a very, very lean and effective and well communicated team coming together to deal with the day-to-day issues, challenges and tasks that need to be performed. So moving on, number 5, build projects around motivated individuals. This builds on what we've just been talking about. Give them the environment and the support they need and trust them to get the job done. You'll soon see if the job's not being done. Your boards will tell you that. Your metrics will tell you that. It's your job to find a way to create an environment so that they can achieve it. Okay, number 6. Face-to-face conversation is the most efficient and effective method of conveying information to and within different teams. Documenting conversations, creating email narrative streams, even using collaborative software are all well and good. But when you're trying to move swiftly, you don't have time to wait for a reply. You need immediate answers, and the only way to achieve that speed of response is by talking to your team members or individuals in person. You can do this by working in the same physical space or having distributed teams that are working in virtual space. But it's the latter that you want to try to keep the schedules to the same hours, and you can use your video conferencing and the video conferencing tool set in order to enable you to really effectively collaborate, particularly at the time when we've got the COVID pandemic running. So, number 7, the final product is the primary measure of progress. That means if it's software that we're looking at, then we need to make sure that it's working correctly. It does what the customer has asked for. You're not measuring progress by checking off tasks or moving, or how well you moved across your schedule and your timelines, but the success is measured in terms of the product that you're delivering to your customer. Basically, it's staying focused on what's important. The process is what gets you to achieve the goal of the project. But the goal of the project isn't the process. It's the product that the customer is paying for. So you can see the sort of environment that we're looking at trying to create here. You can sort of see how we're moving the focus away from the plan and the process and the organization to what the customer needs in a way that we can deliver the right thing at the right time, at the right cost that's going to satisfy them in a phased and balanced way. So number 8, as we cut our way through these 12 guiding principles, agile processes promote sustainable development. So all the stakeholders, all those that have got an interest in the project, either actively involved or passively or sitting on the sides, should be able to maintain a constant pace indefinitely. So we're gearing it up so that it can run and run and run. And we're not overcharging it and burning people out or doing very little or creating a toxic environment because we just can't seem to manage all of the issues that are going on, and people don't want to operate in that way for very long. So we're really trying to create an environment, a set of processes, a workload level that delivers the customer commitments, but in a way that is repeatable and sustainable and stimulating and enjoyable to all of those that are involved in it. Number 9, continuous attention to technical excellence and good design enhances agility. The more you get the product right, the more things drop in place smoothly, the easier it's going to be, the less problems there are going to be, the less panics and sprints and swarming around particular issues you're likely to find. So that concentration on really making sure that you're getting the excellence in all of the things that might go into that particular product that you're developing, the better. Number 10, simplicity. The art of maximizing the amount of work not done is essential. So this is that streamlining that we were talking about before, that ability to step back and just get rid of all of the non-value added tasks, streamline it all down so you're focusing on the things that add the real or business value to what you're doing, and you keep it simple and you keep it focused. Number 11, the best architectures, requirements and designs emerge from self-organizing teams. So if you're living and breathing something day in, day out, you get to sort of get a feel and an understanding of it that you often can't when you're more remote. And it's those teams that are going to be involved in the day-to-day who are able to have an opportunity to step back, review, rethink, and make changes that are often going to be the ones who are able to further improve and refine their methodologies and their ways of working. And I think this is why we're seeing this proliferation of different agile project management methodologies starting to come out. Because as teams are doing this more and more and more, they're able to make adjustments and refinements to their methodologies that better align them to the particular projects that they are running. So I would see that continuation in terms of that, and giving them the freedom in order to be able to do that, obviously within some sort of sensible constraints, is going to help you to really have some phenomenally well optimized methodologies and teams that own them, and therefore are really going to want to make sure that they get them to work. And the 12th and final one, at regular intervals, the team reflects on how to become more effective, then tunes and adjusts its behavior accordingly, which is sort of building on the one that we were talking about before. So I hope those 4 core values and the 12 guiding principles can help you to see the sort of environments that we're trying to create that enable agile project management to really thrive and grow and give you performance levels that you're never going to get from any other type of approach. If you can create those environments, you've got a very, very good chance of being able to get agile project management really working well for you, providing you're applying it to the right sort of projects. So, agile methodology. What are some of the key aspects that we see in that family of agile frameworks? Let's just have a little look at some of the sort of key elements and components. So, reminding ourselves that the goal of agile is to produce shorter development cycles and more frequent product releases than the traditional waterfall or cascade project management methodology. The shorter time frame enables project teams to react to changes in clients' needs more effectively. And you can use different agile frameworks, Kanban being a really main common popular methodology, but there are others as well, Scrum being an adaptation that again is incredibly popular, that is a little bit more constrained than the Kanban one and focuses on sprinting smaller cycles of activity. So there's a real concentration on pushing priority items through in a really time-driven way, whereas the Kanban one doesn't quite do it in such a structured and time-bound and organised way. Many commonalities between the methodologies, and a lot of them have all evolved out from the Kanban one, which is why we took the time out in the first part of this webinar to talk about them. So the sort of common features associated with the agile methodologies sort of all follow the basic same processes. So those sort of key elements that we sort of look out for are these sorts of things. So user stories. Put simply, a user story is a high-level definition of a work request. It contains just enough information so the team can produce a reasonable estimate of the effort required to accomplish the request. This short, simple description is written from the user's perspective, which is why we call them user stories, and focuses on outlining what your client wants, their goals, and why. Sprints. Sprints are a short iteration, a cluster of activities that can be done in an iterative manner. Usually between 1 to sort of 3 weeks to complete, where teams work on tasks determined by the sprint planning meeting. So you'll have a stand-up, you'll identify where there is something that needs to be moved through quickly, you will agree on those sprints, and then you will put in place the steps and the resources in order to be able to iterate that cycle rapidly with a view to delivering a customer outcome, a customer delivery. So as you move forward, the idea is to continually repeat these sprints until your product is feature ready. Once the sprint is over, you review the product to see what is and isn't working, make adjustments, and begin another sprint to improve the product or service. So a particular sprint or a particular product or particular software algorithm may be made up of a series of subroutines, and therefore you can put a sprint on each of the subroutines so that you, in a relatively short period of time, can bring that whole module of software together in a way that it all works very, very effectively, but you can learn the lessons associated with how that was done, and you can also see if there might be better ways of structuring or putting content in or organizing that software module for when you do the next one. Stand-up meetings, these sort of like speak for themselves. We don't want people coming in, sitting down and making sort of a leisurely event of it. We're really looking at daily stand-up meetings, usually less than 10 minutes, often referred to as scrum meetings, where everybody comes together for a short, sharp push of energy and effort. And they're a great way to ensure that everyone's on track and everybody's informed. These daily interactions are known as stand-ups because, as I just mentioned, participants are required to stay standing, helping to keep the meetings short and to the point. Sort of other key elements are those display systems, the display boards. So an Agile board, whether it's a Kanban board, a Scrum board, or one of the other methodology boards, each of which can be customized. An Agile board helps your team to track the progress of your project. It can be a whiteboard, it can be sticky notes, it can be a Kanban board, it can be software. There are a range of ways in which you can organize and display the information associated with the project. So managing the backlog, this is really what it's all about. We don't want backlogs occurring that then have consequential knock-on effect that will create problems in terms of our customer outcomes. So managing your backlog, this is the list of things that need to be done. It is a vital role for project managers in an agile environment. So as project requests are added through your intake system, they become outstanding stories, user stories, in the backlog. During agile planning sessions, your team will estimate story points to each task. And during sprint planning, stories in the backlog are moved into the sprint to be completed during the iteration. So agile teams, just a little bit on this quickly because they are so key to delivering the performance. So different agile methodologies require specific team roles to follow the framework. There are a few common roles that I'm just sort of pulling out here. So the project facilitator, often referred to as Scrum Master. So this role really ensures that each sprint stays on track and helps to remove or resolve any issues or challenges that may come up. They are the team's advocate. Product owner. The role of the product owner is to define the goals of each sprint, manage and prioritize the team backlog, and be the voice of the customer or the internal stakeholder. Team members speak for themselves, really. These are the people on the team, and they're the ones that execute the work in each sprint. These teams usually of sort of between 3 and 7 people, can be composed of different specialities and strengths, and they can be teams of people with the same sort of job roles. And the other sort of key role that we see occurring are stakeholders. So this is an informational role only, typically. Stakeholders would be kept up to date on the product, the sprint goals, and have the opportunity to review and approve work during a sprint and provide feedback during the sprint retrospective. The sprint retrospective is where when a sprint has been completed, you step back and undertake a review and look at the lessons learned from that with a view to applying those back in for this continuous improvement cycle, and is built in as part of the fundamental processes. So there's a number of key characteristics that we look for in the teams. I'm not going to spend a great deal of time on these. T-shaped people, these are basically people that are team oriented, so they're looking after the team and the interests in the team. Cross-functional, so we're bringing together a whole series of different disciplines and the knowledge that comes with that, and the ability to communicate much more effectively broadly across the organization. We're looking for adaptability, so people that are flexible, reactive, responsive, and see the value in making changes and adjustments. We're looking for people that are curious. They're asking the question, why isn't that good enough? What's going on here? Because they're the ones that are drawing out the improvement opportunities. We're looking for that entrepreneurial nature, that sort of problem solving, that looking for ways in which we can lean things up and streamline them. We've got that sort of team orientation culture that we're trying to build, where we're getting the sort of T-shaped individuals to really sort of share their goals and ways of working, and really trying to build in a commitment to excellence. You know, we can put ourselves into our customer's position, and therefore we can look at whether or not what we're doing meets would be what we would want to have to receive if we were that customer. So again, there are sort of characteristics that you would want to see in many teams, but are incredibly powerful in an agile team, particularly where you're wanting to make it responsible for its own actions and activities. It becomes self-organizing and self-managing. So just before we sort of finish off, just a couple of other bits and pieces just to sort of touch on with you, so that you're aware of them if you're not already. And these are the sort of 6 steps in the Agile methodology. So the processes sort of typically involve 6 key steps. That's sort of project planning. So this is where we're really outlining the framework of the plan, what order the products need to be done in, and how will we go about organizing the Agile methodologies in order to be able to achieve them. Out from that, we can then create our product roadmaps, so that we've got a feel for the flow and the order that we're wanting to do things in, and sort of get our visualization boards, our Kanban or other agile boards customized around that. There's release planning. So in traditional waterfall project management, there is one implementation date that comes really at the end of the project once everything's been developed. When we're using Agile, however, your project will use shorter development cycles, the sprints, with features being released at the end of each cycle. So this is really looking at that more lower level part of the plan in terms of those feature releases and the sprints that will drive them. And that then takes us on to the sprint planning, where we are identifying our plans for which bits we're needing to put the focus and energy on in order to get the right features to come together to meet whatever particular customer release that we are trying to achieve. And that's supported with the daily stand-ups, these scrum meetings that are short and sharp and very focused, but really to the point, and enable everybody to keep up to date and to refocus where there may be a need to do so. And as I've touched on before, we've got the sprint review and lessons learned sessions. These are often called sprint retrospectives, and it gives us the ability to step back and just take that time out to really understand what lessons we have learned and to put steps in place in order to be able to deal with them properly in the future. Lots of different frameworks starting to evolve. Kanban being a massive primary methodology, as is the Scrum, but there are a variety of other ones. Extreme programming, often referred to as XP, in the software industry. There's a series of feature-driven developments and methodologies that are associated with that. There's another one called Crystal, and there are loads of others that are all coming out from. A lot of these sort of sprint retrospectives where people are looking at the methodology and seeing if they can further develop it and optimize it. And that's giving us this proliferation of different frameworks and software tools that support them as well. So the very final bit, sort of just getting you started with your Agile project management. If this is something that you are really wanting to sort of get going. So I think once you feel comfortable moving forward with Agile, you'll want to start by educating your Agile teams on how they can transition into their new roles and when they'll begin having their daily stand-up meetings and how they'll sort of go into this whole sort of new way of working. That will be something which might be quite different for some people, put them well out of their comfort zones, particularly if they have spent a lot of time in the traditional project management methodology sort of teams and working arrangements. So after you establish your transition steps, and I'd be looking to a new project in which to bring this in on, make sure everyone is comfortable with a new style of work, and you'll want to monitor and track their progress and success. There are sort of a number of really sort of basic and important parts to Agile project management, as we've been discussing. And as you transition your team into the Agile methodology, you'll start to pick up these new processes and ways of working. Again, Agile software, the tools, the roles, the principles, the core values will all help you to change your mindset and begin you on that journey of starting to work together in a much more flexible and adaptable way. So Agile isn't for everyone, but the teams that use it correctly on the right sorts of projects will experience enormous benefits, including the streamlining of work processes, rapid innovation, and high levels of performance output and customer satisfaction. So with that in mind, we've sort of covered the topics that I want. We're just sort of coming up to the end of the webinar. Peter, are there any questions that anybody's asking?
We do have a couple of questions come in, so I will read those out. So the first question: do you have a recommended virtual Kanban type tool?
I don't, because I would be looking to customize it around the particular project that we might be wanting to use it on. But I mean, if you sort of Google Kanban boards, you'll find there are loads of websites with a whole variety of different types of boards for different situations that have been customized, and there are companies that will create software customized Kanban boards for you, or any agile board. So if you're not quite sure what you think you might want, go online, have a little look at what's around, see how it fits what you need, because they need to be customized around your particular business processes as well. And off the back of that, I think it might be more easy for you to sort of pick and choose, well, this one's the closest, but I might need to tweak this bit or tweak that bit. So that will be the approach that I would suggest that you take.
Brilliant, thank you. The next one says, in addition to POSM, I now see Agile Coach, Agile Facilitator, Agile Leader, etc. How are these different from regular roles and accountabilities?
Yeah, what we're seeing is this proliferation of methodologies that are coming out as more people start to use the Agile project management methodologies and are starting to customize. Those customizations are changing some of the roles that are in the team, because slightly different ways of working mean that there are new responsibilities that need to evolve or be given to people. So if a methodology is looking at sort of a particular change to the way that they might want to sprint particular cycles of activity through, then the sort of roles associated with the people that are doing that can evolve and change, and therefore we're starting to see these new titles emerge that are coming off the back of particular adaptations and changes that are taking place. And to be honest with you, there's so many of them going on, it's hard to keep on top of exactly what they are. So really, if you're coming across these terms, what you need to do is just dig down into the particular details of that Agile framework, that methodology that they're using, and you'll better understand what those roles are about as you understand quite how that particular framework or methodology has been evolving. But yeah, you'll see a lot of that. What you'll also see is that there are some very similar types of roles, but they're being given different names. So you can sort of see that, you know, a Scrum Master or a project facilitator are also picking up other names as well in terms of the role that they have in terms of managing and overseeing sprints where they might be occurring.
Okay, brilliant, thank you.
I can't sort of be any more precise than that, really, but have a closer look at the methodology and you should get a better feel for why that particular role has come about, or whether it's just a renaming of something that you already know.
Brilliant. I've got another one. Please, could you elaborate on product goal versus sprint goal?
Yeah, the product goal really is the ultimate finished item or items that the customer will want. So now that may come as a package in terms of phased deliveries. So where we're building up that package, those particular modules or elements of that overall sort of customer goal, then we would be putting sprint plans and sprint activities into it. So, for example, a sprint goal, which might be feature driven, is looking at putting a series of individual features into a module, and that module then may ultimately be one of a number of modules that the customer might have. So, so the sprint goal is the particular goal that a focused set of activities is trying to build. So to build a module which might have 5 or 6 different features in it, you may have 5 or 6 different sprints. Each one will have its goal of one of those features coming together.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Sort of puts it into perspective. It's sort of mini goals and the ultimate end goal.
Brilliant, thank you. The next one, please could you elaborate on user story versus knowledge story?
Yeah, I mean, the user story really is the request from a user's point of view. Where I've come across sort of knowledge stories, they tend to be where there's an expert or some particular knowledge holder that is providing an input. So in some cases where you might be developing products or software that's highly innovative and you don't necessarily have a user that is able to give you those clear requests, what you may do is you might substitute a knowledge holder in. So there's somebody who sort of is bringing what they think are, or using their knowledge in terms of what they think the particular requests might be. So they can add to a user story if you've got one, or they can be a substitute to it where you haven't. But again, the very flexible, adaptable nature of what we're dealing with here is as each of these different frameworks start to form and have and are forming, then people are adapting and changing the titles slightly to meet these subtleties. So, you know, what I might sort of say as a generic thing might be in a very specific methodology being used in a slightly different way. So it's usually where there's an adaptation come in, there's been a recognized need that something extra needs to be added, and it sounds like it could be in that context as well. So you just need to, again, dig down into the specifics to understand the context, the adaptation, and what extra value it's adding in terms of what it's doing. I've not come across it particularly often. I think only once, but there was a particular set of circumstances that where that came in.
Brilliant. Thank you very much there for those answers on that one. I think that's all the questions we've got today. I don't think there's any other questions, but if anybody does have any further questions, please do get in contact and we'll try our best to answer these. If anybody would like any further information or any one-to-one sort of sessions, please do visit the Humber Business Growth Hub, and they'll be able to advise you going forward. It really, I think, just leaves me to say thank you very much, Steve, for delivering today's workshop and the previous workshops, as I know this was a roundup of several. So thank you very much, Steve, for that, and thank everyone for attending today's session. As I say, please do go and have a look at what further events are available on the Grow My SME events page. So do go and have a look at that going forward. But thank you very much, Steve, for today. And yeah, thank you.
My pleasure. Hope everybody enjoyed it. Good luck with your project management.